Mason Reed's life ended in the middle of AP Physics, not literally. Though when Principal Vance's voice crackled over the intercom at 10:47 a.m., calling him to the office immediately, it felt like a death sentence. The entire class turned to stare. Mason felt his stomach drop. "Ooh," someone whispered. "What did you do, Reed?" He hadn't done anything. That was the problem. He never did anything, and somehow his life kept getting worse anyway. By the time Mason reached the main office, 2 police officers were already there. His heart hammered as Principal Vance gestured him into her office with a look of grim disappointment. "Mason, these officers need to ask you some questions about the incident at Hendrix's convenience last night. The robbery." Mason had been working register when a tweaker with a gun had stormed in, screaming about the safe. Mason had raised his hands, explained he didn't have the key, watched the gun go off into the ceiling. The guy had grabbed maybe $80 and run. "I gave my statement last night," Mason said carefully. "We know." The older cop, name tag reading Barnes, had dead eyes. "Thing is, kid, the security footage is corrupted, can't see anything, and Mr. Hendrix claims you knew. The suspect says you let him take the money." Mason's blood went cold. "That's not true. I've never seen that guy before in my... Hendrix says you've been skimming from the register for weeks. Says this was probably your buddy helping you clear out before you quit." "That's insane. He's lying. Son, we're going to need you to... come down to the station." "No." Principal Vance stood. "He's a minor, and you don't have a warrant. If you want to question him further, you'll do it with his mother and a lawyer present." The cops left, but the damage was done. By lunch, everyone knew. Mason Reed, the broke kid who worked nights to support his sick mom and little sister, was, apparently, also a thief. The story spread like wildfire through Ashford High, growing with each retelling. By 6th period, someone had spray-painted "thief" on his locker. Mason stood in the hallway after final bell, staring at the red letters, and felt something inside him crack. Around him, students flowed past, some pretending not to notice, others openly staring, a few snickering. His ex-girlfriend Sierra walked by with her new boyfriend, some college guy with a BMW. She saw him, looked away quickly, kept walking. Nobody said a word. Mason didn't go home right away. He couldn't face his mom's questions, Emma's worried eyes. Instead, he sat in the library until Mrs. Chen gently told him it was closing time at 5 p.m. "You okay, Mason?" She had that same pitying kindness everyone used on him. "Yeah, just studying." She didn't believe him. Nobody ever believed him. Ashford High was the kind of place where your reputation was everything and nothing. Most of the students were either kids from town, working class, future minimum wage, destined to stay in this dying Pennsylvania town forever, or kids from the Heights, the wealthy subdivision where the doctors and lawyers lived. Mason was firmly in the first category, had been his whole life. His phone buzzed, a text from his manager, "You're fired, don't come back, police will be in touch." Mason stared at the screen. He'd lost his job, his reputation, and possibly his freedom in the span of 6 hours. All because some tweaker had picked his register and Hendrix had decided to pin it on the easiest target. He walked to Emma's middle school to pick her up. She was waiting outside, small for 12, wearing his old hoodie that was 3 sizes too big. "Did you really steal money?" she asked immediately. "No. I didn't think so." She adjusted her cracked glasses. "Sophie Martinez's brother said you're going to jail." "I'm not going to jail." Mom was crying when I called her during lunch. Mason felt that crack in his chest widen. "It'll be okay. We'll figure it out." Emma looked up at him with eyes too old for her face. "You always say that." They walked home, in silence. Their apartment was in the old part of town, above a laundromat that had been closed for 2 years. The stairs creaked. The hallway smelled like mold. Their mom was on the couch, having a bad MS day, her hands shaking slightly as she tried to hold her phone. "Mason." Her voice broke. "Baby, what happened?" He told her everything. She cried. He held her. Emma made boxed mac and cheese for dinner, that none of them ate. At 8 p.m., Mason couldn't take it anymore. He told them he was going for a walk, needed to clear his head. His mom tried to argue, but she was too exhausted. Emma just watched him go with those knowing, worried eyes. Mason walked to the nature trail behind the old steel mill. 5 miles of overgrown path that nobody used, where he could be alone with his rage and fear and the crushing certainty that his life was never going to get better. The October night was cold and clear, the moon full overhead. He walked until his legs ached, until the anger blurred into numbness. He was 2 miles in when he found the crater. The impact site was fresh. Scorched trees bent outward, the ground still smoking faintly. At the center, half buried in ash and torn earth, was a sphere of perfect obsidian darkness, about the size of a basketball, pulsing with inner light like a heartbeat. Blue-white. Alien. Beautiful. Mason should have run. Should have called someone. Instead, he climbed down into the crater, drawn by something he couldn't name. When his fingers touched the sphere, it was warm, blood-warm, alive. Then it spoke inside his mind. Compatibility confirmed. Gravitational core bonding initiated. Pain exploded through his hand, racing up his arm like liquid fire. Mason screamed, tried to pull away, but the sphere was melting, flowing like shadow ink up his skin, spreading in intricate patterns that looked almost like circuitry. Over his arm, his chest, his shoulders. It reached his heart and gravity inverted. Mason was on the ground and then he was floating, 10 feet up, weightless and terrified. His stomach lurched. He flailed, grabbed at nothing, fell, but stopped, inches from impact, suspended by invisible force. Core integration, 3%, neural pathways establishing. Host physiology, suboptimal. Initiating optimization, the voice wasn't speaking to him. It was more like reading a status report from his own. Subconscious. Mason hit the ground for real this time, gasping, and the black patterns on his skin faded until they were barely visible. He lay there for 10 minutes, chest heaving, trying to process what had just happened. When he finally stood, his body felt wrong, lighter. When he took a step, he nearly jumped. His legs carried him 3 feet forward effortlessly, like walking on the moon. "What the hell?" he whispered. He tested it again, jumped, went 6 feet straight up, hung in the air for an impossible heartbeat, landed soft as a feather. His mind raced. The sphere was inside him now, absorbed into his skin. The patterns on his chest glowed faintly when he focused, visible through his shirt. And somehow, impossibly, he could control his own gravity. Mason walked home in a daze, sneaking in after midnight. Emma was asleep. His mom had left a note. "Please be safe. I love you." He went to his room, locked the door, and stared at his hands. For the first time in his life, something good had happened to him. Something powerful. Something nobody could take away. Mason didn't sleep. He spent the night testing his limits. It started small, standing on his bed, jumping, hitting the ceiling with a soft thump, then hovering. For 3 impossible seconds, Mason floated in the space between floor and ceiling, defying physics before gravity pulled him back down. Gravitational manipulation. Active. Current capacity. 12% Earth. Normal. 12%, he whispered. What does that mean? Host can reduce personal gravity to 12% of baseline. External manipulation requires core integration, 15% plus. He tested it methodically. When he focused on the warmth in his chest where the patterns glowed, he could make himself nearly weightless. Light enough to jump 15 feet straight up. Light enough to land from his second-story window without making a sound. But it was exhausting. After 20 minutes, his legs felt like jelly. The voice warned, "Energy depletion, rest required." He collapsed on his bed, breathing hard, and despite everything, the false accusation, the job loss, the spray-painted locker, Mason smiled. "Let me 3 a.m., he snuck out. Ran the trail in the dark, and his strides ate up impossible distance. Each step launched him forward, gravity barely a suggestion. He covered 5 miles in minutes, silent as a ghost, and when he reached the crater again, he jumped. 20 feet, 30, 40. He hung in the air, weightless and perfect. Ashford spread out below him, the dying town, the closed mill, the high school where everyone thought he was a thief. Then he fell, and the landing was soft as snow. Mason laughed. Wild, breathless, free, the sun was rising when he finally went home. He showered, changed, grabbed his backpack. His mom was still asleep. Emma was eating cereal, watching him with curious eyes. "You look different," she said. "Just didn't sleep much. Your eyes are brighter." "I don't know." She tilted her head. "Are you okay?" Mason kissed her forehead. "Yeah, I think I actually am." Walking to school felt different. Each step was lighter, easier. The patterns on his chest hummed contentedly under his shirt. When he passed the convenience store, he didn't feel shame or anger. He felt power. Core integration, 18%. Physiological enhancement, ongoing. The voice in his head was constant now, feeding him information. His body was changing, optimizing, strengthening, adapting to handle the gravitational forces. He was taller, leaner. His reflection in store windows showed someone who looked like Mason Reed, but better. He reached Ashford High at 7:45 a.m., ready to face whatever came next. The spray-painted locker was still there. Thief, in red letters, impossible to miss. Mason stood in the crowded hallway, aware of the stares, the whispers. His old friends, Jacob, Tyler, the guys he'd played basketball with freshman year before work consumed his life, stood by their lockers pretending not to see him. Then Derek Chen walked past. Derek, whose dad owned half the car dealerships in the county, who'd made Mason's life hell since middle school. He shoulder-checked Mason hard enough that anyone else would have stumbled. Mason didn't move, didn't even sway. Derek stopped, surprised. Tried again, putting real force into it. Mason stood like a tree. Like gravity itself had decided he belonged exactly where he was. "What the hell?" Derek muttered. Mason turned slowly, looked Derek in the eye, and for the first time in his life, he didn't look away first. "You got something to say?" Mason's voice was quiet, but there was something in it, an edge, a promise, that made Derek take an involuntary step back. The hallway had gone silent. Everyone was watching. "Freak," Derek said, but his voice wavered. He walked away quickly and Mason heard the whispers start. "Did you see that?" Reed didn't even move. "What's wrong with Chen?" In first period English, Mrs. Patterson was handing back essays. When she reached Mason's desk, she paused. "Mason, can I see you after class?" He nodded, expecting another lecture, another adult who believed Hendrix's lies. But when the room cleared, Patterson surprised him. "I know you didn't steal that money," she said quietly. "Hendrix has a history. This isn't the first time he's blamed an employee." She handed him his essay, an A. "Don't let them break you. You're better than this town thinks you are." It was the kindest thing anyone had said to him in days. Mason felt something tight in his chest loosen just slightly. By lunch, the story had shifted. People weren't sure anymore. Derek was telling people that Mason had somehow pushed him without moving, that something was off about him. The doubt was spreading. Mason sat alone in the cafeteria, eating the free lunch that marked him as poor, and didn't care. The sphere hummed in his chest. The patterns glowed faintly under his shirt. He felt different, stronger, ready. Sierra walked past with her college boyfriend. This time when she glanced at Mason, she looked uncertain, like she'd lost something and was just now realizing it. Mason smiled. The changes accelerated. By third day back at school, Mason could do things that shouldn't be possible. In gym class, playing basketball, he jumped for a rebound and went a foot higher than anyone else, hung in the air just a fraction too long. The coach blew the whistle, frowning, but couldn't quite explain what he'd seen. Core integration, 24%. External manipulation range, 5 meters. Mason could affect other things now. In chemistry lab, he made his beaker twice as heavy without touching it, nearly breaking the table. In the hallway, when Derek tried to shove him again, Mason made Derek's backpack so heavy the guy stumbled and fell. "What the hell is wrong with you?" Derek shouted from the floor. Mason walked away, heart pounding. He was getting reckless. Someone was going to notice. Emma noticed first. "You're taller," she said that night at dinner. "Like an inch at least, and you're not eating as much. And yesterday you picked up the couch to get my pencil and you used one hand, Mason. One hand. Their mom was having a good day, actually present, and she looked at Mason with concern. "Honey, are you feeling okay?" "You look—" "I'm fine." He wasn't fine. He was becoming something else. Physiological enhancement. 67%. Complete. The next morning. Mason arrived at school to find Principal Vance waiting by his locker. "We need to talk. My office. Now." His stomach dropped. But when they got to her office, it wasn't about the robbery. It was about a woman in a gray suit, sitting in the visitor chair, smiling pleasantly. "Mason Reed, I'm Dr. Kira Walsh." She stood, offering her hand. "I work for a specialized research division. We've been monitoring some unusual activity in this area." Mason's blood went cold. The patterns on his chest burned. "What kind of activity?" "Gravitational anomalies." Walsh's smile didn't reach her eyes. 4 days ago, we detected an extraterrestrial object entering Earth's atmosphere. Tracked it to a crater about 2 miles from here. The object is missing, but it's been giving off a unique energy signature. A signature that's been centered on this school for the last 72 hours. Principal Vance looked confused. "What does this have to do with Mason?" "Maybe nothing." Walsh kept her eyes on Mason. "But I'd like to run some tests. Just routine screening. Unless you have something to tell me, Mason." The sphere reacted inside him, patterns flaring bright. Around the office, pens started to float. Papers lifted off the desk. Vance gasped. "What?" Mason forced himself to breathe, pushed down the power. Everything fell. Walsh stood slowly. "I see. Mason, you need to come with me. Now." "He's a student," Vance protested. "You can't just—" "Actually, I can." Walsh pulled out a badge, some government agency Mason didn't recognize. "This is a matter of national security. Mason can come voluntarily, or I can have a team extract him. But either way, he's coming." Mason's phone buzzed. A text from Emma. "Something's wrong at school. Lockdown. Are you okay?" Then the fire alarm went off. Walsh's radio crackled, a panicked voice. "We have a situation at Ashford Middle School. Gravitational disturbance. Multiple casualties." Mason ran, pushed past Walsh, out of the office, sprinting for the exit. Behind him, Walsh shouted for him to stop. But he didn't care. Emma. Emma was at the middle school, 6 blocks away. He ran faster than humanly possible, each stride launching him forward, gravity his ally now. The patterns on his skin blazed bright, visible through his clothes, but he didn't care. The middle school was chaos. Kids streaming out, teachers screaming. The building looked wrong, the roof sagging inward, windows cracked, like some massive weight was crushing it from above. Mason fought through the crowd. Emma. He found her near the gym, huddled with other students. When she saw him, relief flooded her face. Then terror. "Mason, your skin—" He looked down. The patterns were glowing blue-white, covering his arms, his neck. No hiding it now. "Stay." "Here," he ordered, and ran into the building. The gym was the epicenter. The basketball hoops had been pulled down, bent toward the floor. Students were on their knees, crying, unable to stand under some invisible weight. And at the center stood a figure, human-shaped, but wrong. Its skin was covered in patterns like Mason's, but corrupted, pulsing red instead of blue. When it moved, it stuttered, frames missing like a video glitch. When it saw Mason, it smiled with too many teeth. Rogue, core, detected, reclamation protocols activated. The thing raised one hand and Mason felt his own gravity reverse. He shot upward, slamming into the gym ceiling. Pain exploded through his back. He tried to counter it, to control his weight, but this thing was stronger. It looked up at him with empty, red-lit eyes. "Unauthorized integration will be terminated. Core will be reclaimed. Host will be neutralized." Mason fell. This time the landing wasn't soft. He hit the floor hard enough to crack tile. Through blurred vision, he saw the corrupted figure walking toward him. Behind it, Emma stood in the doorway, screaming his name. The thing reached for Mason's chest, for the sphere pulsing desperately inside him. Then the world went white, and the voice screamed in his head, emergency protocols engaged. "Gravitational field, maximum output, Warning, host survival not guaranteed. Recommendation: accept full core integration. Mason felt power flooding through him. More than he'd ever felt, burning through his veins like lightning. The patterns on his skin blazed bright enough to hurt. Yes, he gasped. Do it. Integration accelerating. Combat mode. Active. The last thing Mason saw before his vision went pure blue was Emma's terrified face and the corrupted thing lunging for his throat. Tyler didn't sleep Saturday night. He couldn't. Every time he closed his eyes, he saw Junho's face, those black eyes that looked like pools of ink, and heard that voice with too many harmonics saying 3 days. The hollow space in his chest pulsed, irregularly, like a second heartbeat that couldn't quite sync with his real one, and the small dorm room felt suffocating. Marcus was spending the weekend at his girlfriend's place in Seoul, so Tyler had the room to himself, which should have been a relief, but instead just meant more time alone with his spiraling thoughts. He sat at his desk with his laptop open, 17 browser tabs of research staring back at him. Korean folklore, shamanism, mountain spirits, glass artifacts, doorways between worlds. None of it made sense, or all of it made too much sense. The problem was that Tyler's Korean reading ability was terrible, so most of the really detailed sources were inaccessible to him, filtered through Google Translate into broken English that might have been helpful or might have been complete. Nonsense. He found references to something called Yongmul, which seemed to mean spiritual objects or talismans, and another term that translated roughly to hollow carriers. But the context was all wrong, talking about ancient shamans who supposedly channeled spirits by emptying themselves out. That word, hollow, the same word from the note at the shrine. Tyler's hands were shaking as he typed, coffee going cold beside him, the sun starting to rise over Daegu and paint his window in shades of orange that looked too much like fire. His phone buzzed. A message from Seri. "Are you okay? You looked scared yesterday. Everyone's worried about the building thing." Tyler stared at the message for a long moment before typing back. "I'm fine. Just stressed about Junho." It was close enough to the truth. He was stressed about Junho. About what Unyo had become. About what Junho said was coming in 3 days. Which meant 2 days now, because Sunday was already here, and Tyler was no closer to understanding how to stop an ancient evil from breaking through into reality at his Korean high school. The absurdity of the situation would have been funny if Tyler wasn't so terrified. Seri sent back a concerned emoji and told him to rest, and Tyler felt a pang of guilt because she was being genuinely kind and he was lying to her face, or at least lying by omission. But what was he supposed to say? That he had telekinetic powers from a magic glass sphere, and his former bully had found an evil version and opened a doorway to something that wanted to destroy everything. She'd think he was insane. He'd think he was insane if he hadn't seen it with his own eyes. Tyler pushed back from his desk and started pacing the narrow space between his bed and Marcus's bed, power flickering around his fingers unconsciously. Small objects in the room trembled when he wasn't paying attention, his pencils, Marcus's trophy from some soccer tournament, the mini fridge in the corner. Tyler forced himself to breathe, to center, to pull the power back inside where it belonged. He needed help. He needed someone who understood Korea better than him, who knew the mythology and the history and the language. His dad was useless for this. His dad would either think Tyler was having a breakdown or would try to rationalize everything away with science and logic. Tyler thought about his teachers at the academy, but none of them seemed like the type to take this seriously. Then he remembered something. During his first week at the school, there had been an optional culture class about Korean traditions, and the teacher running it was this old woman named Mrs. Choi who taught literature and supposedly had family. Connections to actual shamans or something. Most students had made fun of her behind her back, called her superstitious and old-fashioned, but Tyler had found her fascinating even if he barely understood half of what she said. Maybe she would know something. Maybe she would at least point him in the right direction. Tyler checked the time. 7 in the morning on Sunday. Too early to show up at a teacher's house, but the school would be open for weekend study sessions. Korean students were intense about studying, and the library ran 7 days a week. Mrs. Choi had mentioned once that she came in on Sundays to organize the literature section. It was a shot in the dark, but Tyler was running out of options and time. He showered quickly, threw on jeans and a hoodie, and left the dorm. Daegu was quieter on Sunday mornings, the usual chaos of traffic and people muted into something almost peaceful. Tyler walked through streets he was starting to recognize, past the GS25 convenience store where he'd first discovered his powers, past the mountain trail entrance that led up to the shrine, past all these landmarks of his transformation. The school looked different, empty, bigger. The hallways echoed with Tyler's footsteps as he made his way to the library on the second floor. Sure enough, Mrs. Choi was there, a tiny woman in her 60s with gray hair pulled back tight and reading glasses that made her eyes look enormous. She was shelving books and humming something that sounded like a traditional song. Tyler cleared his throat, and she turned, surprise flickering across her face. "Tyler Sesai, what brings you here on Sunday morning?" Her English was heavily accented, but clear. Tyler had rehearsed this on the walk over, but now that he was actually standing in front of her, the words felt stuck. "How did you tell someone that reality was breaking?" "Mrs. Choi, I need to ask you about Korean folklore, about spirits and doorways and objects that carry power." Her expression shifted immediately. The kind surprise became something sharper, more alert. She set down the books she was holding carefully and gestured for Tyler to follow her to a small office at the back of the library. The office was cramped and smelled like old paper and incense. Mrs. Choi closed the door behind them and sat down, folding her hands on her desk. "Why are you asking about these things?" Tyler took a breath. "Because I think something bad is happening, something supernatural, and I don't know how to stop it." He expected her to laugh, to dismiss him, to tell him to stop watching so much. Anime. Instead, Mrs. Choi's face went very serious. "Show me. Show you what?" "You found something, didn't you? Touched something you shouldn't have. I can see it in your eyes. They're darker at the edges. That's the mark of hollow carriers." Tyler's heart nearly stopped. "You know about hollow carriers?" "My grandmother was a mudang, a shaman. I grew up hearing stories about the old things that sleep in Korea's mountains and temples, about the glass spheres that appear when the barriers between worlds grow thin, about the people who carry the hollow inside them." She leaned forward. "Show me what you can do." Tyler hesitated, then focused on a pen sitting on her desk. He reached out with the hollow feeling in his chest, and the pen lifted into the air, spinning slowly between them. Mrs. Choi watched without flinching, her expression sad rather than shocked. "How long?" she asked quietly. "Since Friday I found a clear glass sphere at a mountain shrine. It merged with me." Tyler let the pen drop. "But there's someone else, a student named Junho. He found a black glass sphere, and now he's different. Wrong. He says something is coming through a doorway. In 3 days. 2 days now. And I don't know how to stop it." Mrs. Choi stood up and went to a filing cabinet in the corner. She pulled out a folder so old the edges were yellowing and spread papers across her desk. Tyler saw drawings, photographs, newspaper, and clippings in Korean. "The glass spheres are called Gong-hyomun, which means hollow gates. They appear during periods of spiritual instability, when the walls between our world and the other place grow weak. The clear glass binds to those who are broken but want to protect. The black glass binds to those who are broken and want to destroy." She pointed to one of the drawings, a sphere that looked exactly like the one Tyler had found. "Your friend found black glass because his breaking was different than yours. Anger instead of sadness, rage instead of grief. The hollow inside him connects to something old and hungry that has been waiting under Korea for a very long time." "What is it?" Tyler's voice came out hoarse. "What's trying to come through?" "My grandmother called it the Void King. A spirit entity that existed before humans, that feeds on emptiness and despair. It was sealed away centuries ago by shamans who sacrificed everything to trap it between worlds. But the seal has been weakening. Korea's modernization, the loss of old traditions, the way people stopped believing in the old things, all of it made the barriers thinner. The Gong-hyomun are the seal's last defense. They bond to carriers who can either strengthen the barriers or shatter them completely. Mrs. Choi looked at Tyler with something like pity. Your friend with the black glass. He's not trying to bring something through a doorway. He is the doorway. The Void King is using him as an anchor point to break into our reality. Tyler felt sick. How do I stop it? You can't, not alone. The clear glass gives you power, but the black glass gives your friend connection to something infinitely stronger. When the Void King breaks through fully, it will consume him first, then spread outward. It will turn all of Daegu into a hollow place, a dead zone where nothing can exist except emptiness and hunger. She shuffled through the papers and pulled out a photograph. It showed a barren landscape, nothing but gray, dirt and dead trees. This is what happened to a village in the north 70 years ago when a black glass carrier lost control. 500 people lived there. Now there's nothing, not even bones, just hollow ground where reality has been eaten away. Tyler's hands clenched into fists. There has to be something. Some way to fight it. Why give me these powers if I can't? Then use them. The clear glass doesn't give you powers to fight the Void King directly. It gives you powers to protect, to shield, to hold the line while others escape. Mrs. Choi met his eyes. You're meant to be the last defense, Tyler SSE, the one who holds the barrier closed long enough for people to evacuate. That's the burden of hollow carriers. You don't get to win. You just get to buy time for others to survive. The office felt too small. Tyler stood up, power crackling through him so intensely that papers on Mrs. Choi's desk started to flutter. That's not good enough. I'm not going to just accept that Junho and everyone at this school has to die. There has to be another way. Then you need to find the other carriers. Mrs. Choi's voice was calm, despite the small storm Tyler was creating. The Gong Hyoman bond to multiple people during each awakening. If black glass appeared, then other clear glass must have appeared as well. Find them. Together you might have enough power to do more than just delay. Tyler forced himself to calm down, to pull the power back inside. How do I find them? Look for the signs. People whose eyes are darkening at the edges. People who seem different, stronger, more aware than they were before. People who are drawn to empty places and high ground. She handed him a piece of paper, with Korean characters written on it. This is a protection charm my grandmother taught me. It won't stop the Void King, but it will hide you from its attention for a short time. Keep it with you. Tyler took the paper, folded it carefully into his pocket. Why are you helping me? Because 70 years ago, my grandmother was a hollow carrier. She held the barrier closed while her entire village evacuated. She died doing it, but she saved 300 people who made it out in time. Mrs. Choi's eyes were wet. She always said the carriers are chosen from among the broken, because only broken people understand what's worth protecting. You're broken, Tyler C. I can see it. But you're also still fighting. That matters. Tyler didn't know what to say to that, so he just bowed, trying to do it correctly for once, and Mrs. Choi bowed back. You have 2 days, she reminded him. Use them wisely. Tyler left the library with more questions than answers, but at least now he had a direction. Find other carriers. Find others who'd been changed by clear glass. Find allies. He spent the rest of Sunday walking through Daegu, with new eyes, looking for the signs Mrs. Choi had mentioned. Eyes darkening at the edges. People drawn to empty places and high ground. It sounded impossible, like trying to find specific grains of sand on a beach. But Tyler had nothing else. He went to parks, to shopping districts, to the areas near other, schools. He rode the subway and studied faces. He climbed to observatory decks and rooftops and scanned crowds below. Nothing. Or at least, nothing obvious. Tyler was starting to think this was hopeless when he saw her. A girl, maybe 16, sitting alone on a bench near Duryu Park. She wasn't doing anything unusual, just reading a book, but her eyes caught the sunlight wrong, too dark at the edges, and the space around her felt different, like the air was thicker, heavier. Tyler approached cautiously, sat down on the other end of the bench, and pretended to check his phone. Up close, he could feel it. The hollow space, not inside him, but beside him. This girl had it too. "You can stop pretending," she said without looking up from her book. Her English was perfect, American accent. "I can feel you. Same way you can feel me." Tyler's heart raced. "You found a glass sphere. Clear glass. Last Saturday in a temple garden in the hills." She finally looked at him, and Tyler saw she was pretty in a sharp way, with short dark hair and eyes that were definitely darker at the edges, just like his. "Let me guess. You found one too. Something happened to someone you know who found black glass, and now you're freaking out because reality is breaking." "How did you know?" "Because the same thing happened to me. My older brother found black glass 3 days ago. Now he's locked in our apartment talking to things I can't see and saying the walls are getting thinner." She closed her book. "I'm Emma. I've been looking for others like us since yesterday." Tyler felt a rush of relief so intense he almost laughed. "I'm Tyler, and I just found out we're supposed to find multiple carriers and work together because, apparently, we're the only thing standing between this city and something called the Void King." Emma's expression darkened. "Void King. Yeah, my brother keeps saying that name, says it's beautiful, says it's going to make everything quiet and empty and perfect." She stood up. "I've been researching online, trying to find anyone posting about strange abilities or weird experiences in Daegu over the last week. Found a few possibles. There's a university student named Daniel who posted about moving objects with his mind on a Korean forum before deleting it. And a middle school kid named Connor, whose classmates have been posting videos of him doing impossible things, except the videos keep getting taken down. Can you find them?" Tyler stood too. "I can try. I grabbed screenshots before the deletions." "But Tyler, what exactly are we supposed to do when we find them? What's the actual plan here?" Tyler thought about Mrs. Choi's words. About being meant to hold the line, to buy time, to accept sacrifice. "We're going to stop this, not just delay it, stop it completely. I don't care what tradition says carriers are supposed to do. I'm not letting Junho or your brother or anyone else get consumed by some ancient evil because reality's barriers are thin." Emma studied him for a moment, then nodded. "Okay, I'm in, but we need to move fast. If the Void King is breaking through tomorrow, we need to have a plan by tonight." They spent the afternoon hunting. Emma had screenshots showing a university student's deleted post about telekinesis, and she'd traced his account to a forum where students from Gyeongbuk National University discussed everything from classes to dating to apparently supernatural phenomena. The student's username was DK Daniel, and his last post before deletion was asking if anyone else in Daegu had experienced reality glitches near old temples. Tyler and Emma took a taxi to the university campus, a sprawling complex north of the city center. Finding one student among thousands seemed impossible until Emma pointed out that carriers were drawn to high ground and empty spaces. They went to the highest building on campus, a 10-story library, and climbed to the top floor. Sure enough, there was a guy about 20 years old sitting by a window, staring out at the city with eyes that were definitely darker at the edges. Tyler approached him directly. "Daniel, we need to talk about the glass sphere you found." The guy's head whipped around, fear and relief warring on his face. "How did you know?" "Because we found them too." Emma held up her hand and made a pencil on a nearby desk float. "And we need your help. Something bad is coming tomorrow and we're running out of time." Daniel stood up fast enough to knock his chair over. "I thought I was losing my mind. I thought I was the only one. I found this sphere at a temple last week, and now I can move things and see things, and I swear reality keeps glitching around me like the world is buffering." "You're not crazy," Tyler assured him. "But we need to find one more person, a middle school student named Connor. Do you know how to track someone from deleted videos?" Daniel nodded slowly. "Yeah, I'm a computer science major. If the videos were on Korean platforms, I can probably trace them. Give me 20 minutes. He pulled out a laptop, and Tyler, and Emma watched as he worked, fingers flying across the keyboard, muttering to himself in a mix of English and Korean. 15 minutes later, he had an address. A middle school in the eastern part of the city where a student named Connor Hayes had apparently demonstrated abilities during gym class before the footage got scrubbed from social media. They took another taxi, traffic getting heavier as afternoon turned to evening. And Tyler felt the hollow space in his chest pulsing faster, responding to something, time running out. The middle school was smaller than Tyler's academy, older, with a playground that looked worn down. Classes had ended for the day, but there was still a soccer game happening on the field. Tyler spotted him immediately. A skinny kid, maybe 14, with red hair and freckles that marked him as obviously foreign. Standing alone by the fence and watching the game with eyes that were too dark at the edges. "Connor Hayes?" Tyler called out as they approached. The kid turned, tension in every line of his body, ready to run. "Who's asking?" "People like you, people who found clear glass spheres and got changed." Tyler held up his hand and made a soccer ball on the field, pause mid-bounce, hover for a second, then continue. The kid's eyes went wide. "There are others." Emma stepped forward. "4 of us now, and we need you because tomorrow something very bad is breaking through into our reality, and we're apparently the only ones who can stop it." Connor looked between them, then at Daniel, who nodded confirmation. "I'm 13. I'm in 8th grade. What am I supposed to do against some kind of supernatural threat?" "The same thing we're all going to do," Tyler said. "Figure it out together, because the alternative is letting everyone in this city get consumed by the Void King, and I don't know about you, but I'm not okay with that." Connor was quiet for a long moment, then something hardened in his expression, something that looked older than 13. "When do we start?" They found a private space in a PC Bang, one of Korea's ubiquitous internet cafes, and rented a room in the back where they could talk without being overheard. Tyler explained everything he'd learned from Mrs. Choi while Emma and Daniel compared notes on their abilities. Connor stayed quiet, listening, his young face serious. When Tyler finished, Emma was the first to speak. "So we're supposed to be shields, barriers, last defense while everyone evacuates. That's what tradition says hollow carriers do." "Forget tradition," Daniel said firmly. "No offense to your teacher, Tyler, but I'm not signing up to be a sacrifice. There has to be a way to actually close the doorway instead of just holding it temporarily. What if we could pull Junho back?" Connor's voice was quiet, but everyone turned to look at him. "You said the black glass makes him the doorway, the anchor point. What if we could break that connection, separate him from the Void King before it fully manifests?" Tyler felt a spark of hope. "How?" "The hollow space inside us, it's not just emptiness, right? It's potential, energy. What if we combined our power, 4 clear glass carriers working together? We could create a barrier strong enough to cut the connection, pull Junho out of the doorway before it opens completely." Emma nodded slowly. "That could work, but we'd need to be in sync, perfect coordination, and we'd need to get close to Junho, which means going wherever he is tomorrow when this all goes down." "He'll be at the school," Tyler said with certainty. He mentioned the school specifically, said he was going to remake it. That's where the doorway will open. Daniel pulled up a map on his laptop. "Daegu International Academy. I know where that is. If we're doing this, we need a plan. Entry points, evacuation routes, backup strategies if the first attempt fails." They spent the next 3 hours planning. Daniel mapped the school layout from satellite images. Emma researched synchronized power usage from what little existed online about telekinesis and psychic phenomena. Connor, despite being the youngest, had the clearest tactical mind and started sketching out positions and approach vectors. Tyler coordinated it all, feeling something like leadership settling onto his shoulders. By the time they left the PC Bang, the sun had set and Daegu was lit up in neon and streetlights. They had a plan. It wasn't a great plan. It was barely even a good plan. But it was something, and something was better than nothing. Tyler walked back to his dorm alone, the others heading to their respective homes with promises to meet tomorrow at noon, 2 hours before Mrs. Choi said the barriers would be weakest and the Void King would break through. His phone buzzed, a message from his dad asking where he'd been all day. Tyler sent back a vague excuse about studying with classmates and silenced his phone. His dad wouldn't understand this. Nobody would except the other carriers. Tyler lay in bed staring at the ceiling, power humming through him, and thought about Junho. About the kid who'd made his life hell for 6 months, but who was now being consumed by something ancient and hungry. Despite everything, Tyler didn't want Junho to die. He just wanted him to stop being a jerk. The Void King was turning that into a cosmic problem. Monday morning arrived grey and cold. Tyler barely slept. He got up early, showered, put on his school uniform, and stared at himself in the mirror. Same face, same brown hair. But his eyes were definitely darker now, the edges almost black, and there was something different in his expression, something harder, something that had seen too much in too short a time. He met Emma, Daniel, and Connor at a coffee shop 3 blocks from the school at 11:30. They all looked tired. Connor had dark circles under his eyes that made him look even younger. Emma's hands shook slightly as she drank her coffee. Daniel kept checking his watch compulsively. "Everyone clear on the plan?" Tyler asked. 3 nods. "We go in together, find Junho, create a synchronized barrier, cut his connection to the Void King, pull him back to our reality. And if it doesn't work?" Emma's voice was steady despite her shaking hands. "Then we hold the line long enough for the school to evacuate. We do what carriers are supposed to do." Tyler met each of their eyes. "But we're going to make option 1 work. We have to." They finished their coffee in silence and walked to Daegu International Academy together. The school looked normal from the outside. Students were arriving for afternoon classes, teachers were chatting by the entrance. Everything seemed perfectly ordinary except Tyler could feel it. The hollow space in his chest was pulsing in sync with something massive, something approaching, something that was using Junho as a beacon. The 4 carriers walked through the front gates and Tyler felt the other 3 tense. They could all feel it now. The wrongness. The way reality seemed. Thinner here, like paper stretched too tight. They didn't go to class. They went straight to the maintenance building behind the gymnasium, the place where Tyler had last seen Junho. The building looked different in daylight. Smaller, less threatening. But the darkness pouring from its broken windows was very real, visible now even in afternoon sun, like smoke, except smoke didn't move that way, didn't writhe and reach like it was alive. "He's in there," Connor whispered. "I can feel him, or it, or both." Tyler pulled out the protection charm Mrs. Choi had given him. Just a piece of paper with Korean characters, but when he held it up, the darkness recoiled slightly. "These will hide us for maybe 5 minutes. After that, the Void King will know we're here. We need to move fast." He handed out copies he'd made at the PC Bang. Each carrier took one, tucked it away. Daniel took a deep breath. "On 3? On 3. Tyler counted down, and they entered the maintenance building together. The inside was worse than Tyler remembered. The walls were covered in those disturbing symbols now, hundreds of them, pulsing with black light. The air felt thick and wrong, like trying to breathe underwater, and in the center of the main room, floating 3 feet off the ground in a lotus position, was Junho. Except Junho was barely recognizable. His entire body had taken on that grey pallor Tyler had seen before, and his eyes were completely black, no whites at all. Just pure darkness that seemed to extend beyond his skull into someplace else. Behind him, visible through him like he was becoming translucent, was something massive. Something that existed in too many dimensions. The Void King. Tyler could only see pieces of it, fragments that his brain could process. A crown made of absence, hands with too many fingers. A mouth that was more concept than physical thing. It was using Junho as a window, looking through him into this reality, and with every second that passed, Junho became more transparent, and the Void King became more real. "Now," Tyler shouted, and all 4 carriers unleashed their power simultaneously. The hollow spaces in their chests opened wide, and power poured out, 4 streams of force that converged on Junho, wrapping around him, creating a barrier between him and the thing behind him. For a moment, it worked. Tyler felt the connection strain, felt Junho's consciousness flicker back toward awareness, felt the Void King's surprise. Then the Void King pushed back. The force was immense, infinite, like trying to hold back an ocean, with bare hands. Tyler screamed from the pressure, felt blood trickle from his nose, saw Emma drop to one knee and Daniel stagger backward. Only Connor held firm, the 13-year-old's face set in grim determination that looked wrong on someone so young. "More!" Connor yelled. "We need more power! Dig deeper!" Tyler didn't know how to dig deeper. He was giving everything. But he reached down into the hollow space inside him and found something he hadn't accessed before. A reservoir of potential that came from every moment of loneliness, every time he'd felt out of place, every ounce of pain from 6 months of being the foreign kid who didn't belong. He pulled on that pain and converted it to power and pushed. Beside him, he felt the others doing the same. Emma's isolation, Daniel's fear of losing his mind, Connor's rage at being too young and too small and too powerless to help. All of it became fuel. All of it became strength. The barrier around Junho solidified, hardened, became something real and tangible instead of just force. Tyler saw Junho's eyes flicker, saw awareness return for just a second, saw his mouth move, forming words. "Help me." That was all Tyler needed. He pushed harder. The other carriers matched him, and together they created a blade of pure force and drove it between Junho and the Void King, severing the connection. The scream that followed wasn't sound. It was reality breaking. Tyler felt his eardrums rupture, felt the world tilt sideways, felt time itself stutter and skip. The void. King's presence receded like water being sucked down a drain, pulling back through the doorway, back between worlds, and the doorway collapsed behind it with a thunderclap that shattered every window in the maintenance building. Junho dropped to the floor, unconscious but breathing. The grey pallor was fading from his skin. His eyes were closed, but Tyler could see movement behind the lids. Human movement. The 4 carriers stood in the wreckage, panting, bleeding from ears and noses, but alive. They'd done it. They'd actually done it. "Is it over?" Emma's voice was hoarse. Tyler reached out with his senses, feeling for the hollow space, for any trace of the Void King. Nothing. Just emptiness. Normal emptiness, the kind that belonged in reality. "Yeah," he said, and started laughing because he couldn't believe it. "Yeah, it's over. We won." Connor sat down hard, looking like he might pass out. Daniel leaned against a wall and slid to the floor. Emma walked over to Junho and checked his pulse, then gave Tyler a thumbs up. They'd saved him, saved everyone. Tyler heard sirens in the distance. The window explosion had definitely attracted attention. School security would be here soon, then police, then questions they couldn't answer without sounding insane. "We need a story," Daniel said, reading Tyler's mind. "Something that explains why we're here, why Junho's here, why everything's destroyed." "Gas leak," Connor suggested. "We smelled gas, came to investigate, found Junho passed out, explosion. Happened. We're heroes who saved someone. It was thin, but it was something." Tyler nodded, and they quickly arranged themselves to look like they'd been helping, rather than fighting interdimensional entities. By the time security arrived, followed quickly by teachers and emergency services, the 4 carriers had their story straight. Junho was rushed to the hospital. The building was declared structurally unsound. Classes were cancelled for the rest of the day, and somehow, impossibly, everyone believed the gas leak story. Tyler stood outside the school gates 3 hours later, watching the sun set over Daegu. Emma, Daniel, and Connor were with him, all of them looking exhausted but satisfied. "What happens now?" Emma asked. "Do we just go back to normal? Pretend this never happened?" "I don't think we can," Daniel said. "We're changed. The hollow space is still inside us. The power is still there. Mrs. Choi said the Gonghyomen appear during periods of spiritual instability," Tyler said slowly. "What if this wasn't the only time? What if there are other black glass carriers out there, other threats?" Connor groaned. "Please tell me you're not suggesting what I think you're suggesting." Tyler smiled, despite his exhaustion. "I'm suggesting that if we could stop the Void King, we could probably handle other problems. We're pretty good together. All of us foreigners, all of us broken in different ways, all of us carrying this hollow thing that's supposed to make us weak, but actually makes us strong." "A team," Emma said. "You want to make a team of hollow carriers. Why not? Someone has to protect this city. Might as well be us. They stood in silence for a moment, then Daniel started laughing. This is insane. We're high school and college kids. We have homework and cram school and university applications. And now we also have supernatural powers and responsibility for keeping reality from breaking, Connor added. Great. Just what I needed in 8th grade. But despite his sarcasm, Tyler could see the small smile on Connor's face, could see the way all of them stood a little taller, moved a little closer together. They'd formed something today. Something more than friendship. A bond forged from shared trauma and shared victory. Tyler's phone buzzed. A message from Sari asking if he was okay, if the gas leak had hurt anyone, saying she was glad he was safe. Tyler smiled and typed back that he was fine. Better than fine, actually. For the first time since coming to Korea, Tyler felt like he belonged somewhere. Not to the school, not to the country, but to this group. These 3 other broken people who'd been chosen by mysterious glass spheres and who'd decided that destiny could take a hike because they were going to write their own story. The sun finished setting, and Daegu's lights came on, the city glowing. In the growing darkness, and Tyler Kim Davis, American foreign kid who never quite fit in, looked at his team and thought maybe being broken wasn't such a bad thing after all. Maybe being broken was exactly what the world needed. The hollow space in his chest pulsed steady and strong, and somewhere in the city, Tyler was certain, another glass sphere was appearing in another temple, another mountain, another empty place. Waiting for the next carrier, the next broken person, who needed power to protect what mattered. But that was tomorrow's problem. Tonight, Tyler and his team were going to get Korean BBQ and celebrate being alive and figure out what the heck they were going to tell their parents about the blood, stains and the ruptured eardrums and the way their eyes looked darker than before. Tomorrow, they'd worry about the next threat. Tomorrow, they'd start training properly, coordinating their abilities, becoming something more than 4 random kids with telekinesis. Tomorrow, they'd figure out what it really meant to be hollow carriers in modern Korea. But tonight they were just 4 kids who'd saved the world and lived to tell about it, even if they couldn't actually tell anyone. And honestly, Tyler thought as Connor made a terrible joke and Emma laughed and Daniel groaned, that was pretty amazing. Mason opened his eyes to fluorescent brightness and the smell of antiseptic. He wasn't in the SUV anymore. The room was small, clinical, white walls, a bed with restraints he wasn't locked into, and a single reinforced window showing nothing but grey sky. His body ached everywhere, a deep bone tiredness that made even breathing feel like work. The patterns on his chest were barely visible, just faint blue lines that pulsed weakly with his heartbeat. Integration. Resuming. Current status. 49%. Energy reserves, 23%. Recommendation, rest cycle required. You're awake. Mason turned his head, too fast the room spun, and saw a girl about his age sitting in the corner, Asian, maybe Korean, with short black hair and tired eyes. She wore the same gray training uniform he realized he was now wearing. How long had he been out? Where? Facility 17, medical wing. You've been asleep for 18 hours. She stood, moved to his bedside with practiced ease. I'm Harper Kim. Walsh assigned me to brief you when you woke up. Brief me on what? Everything. Harper pulled up a chair. But first, your family is fine. Your mom and sister have been relocated to a secured apartment in Pittsburgh. Better neighborhood. Your mom's already seeing new doctors. Emma's enrolled in a good school. They're safe. The relief was physical, like a weightlifting. Off his chest. Can I call them? Not yet. Torres is still hunting you, and any communication could be traced. Give it a week. Let things settle. Harper's expression softened slightly. I know it's hard. I haven't seen my family in 11 months. 11 months? Some of us don't go home. She said it matter-of-factly, without self-pity. Now, Walsh wants you on the training floor in an hour. You're being fast-tracked because of the Torres situation. Normally new hosts get 2 weeks of orientation, but we don't have that luxury. Mason sat up slowly, his ribs protesting. What kind of training? Control. Exercises, combat scenarios, power development. Learning not to accidentally crush someone when you shake their hand. Harper stood. There are 16 other core hosts in this facility right now. You'll meet 3 of them today. Your training squad. Squad? We work in teams. Cores are powerful. Individually, but they're exponentially more effective when coordinated. Plus, it keeps us from going full Torres and eating each other. She said it like a joke, but Mason caught the edge underneath. Has that happened? Here? Harper's expression went carefully blank. Get dressed. Cafeteria's down the hall. Eat something heavy. You'll need the calories. Training floor is sub-level 3. Don't be late. She left before Mason could ask anything else. The cafeteria was surprisingly normal, institutional but clean, with actual food instead of mystery meat. Mason loaded a tray with scrambled eggs, toast, bacon, fruit, and immediately started eating. His body was hungry, the core demanding fuel to continue integration. He wasn't alone. Other people in grey uniforms filled the space, mostly his age or younger, some older. He caught snatches of conversation. Pushed my range to 15 meters yesterday. Cortez melted through another training dummy. That's 3 this week. Heard the new guy took down a corrupted host on his second day. Mason kept his head down, ate fast, and tried not to think about the fact that everyone here was probably enhanced, dangerous, capable of things that defied physics, just like him. Sub-level 3 was accessed by an elevator that required both a keycard and a handprint scan. When the doors opened, Mason stepped into something out of a science fiction movie. The training floor was massive, easily the size of a football field, with sections divided by purpose. One area had what looked like an obstacle course made of floating platforms. Another had reinforced walls scarred with burns and impact craters. A third was just empty space, surrounded by observation windows, and in the center, 3 people waited. Walsh stood with them, tablet in hand. Mason, good. Meet your squad. The first was Harper. Apparently she was more than just his briefing officer. She gave him a small nod. The second was a tall black guy, maybe 20, built like he'd played football before whatever brought him. Here. Daniel Cross, he said, offering his hand. His grip was careful, controlled. Kinetic absorption and redirection. Try not to hit me. I'll just send it back twice as hard. The third made Mason's breath catch. She was small, maybe 17, with blonde hair pulled into a ponytail and eyes that seemed to look through him rather than at him. When she spoke, her voice was distant, dreamy. Emma Reeves. Probability. Manipulation. I can see the chances of things before they happen. She tilted her head. You're going to make a mistake in the next 30 seconds. Try not to die from it. That's unsettling, Mason said. You get used to it, Daniel muttered. Walsh stepped forward. Gravitational manipulation, kinetic redirection, and probability. Sight. On paper, you 3 are one of our strongest potential squads. In practice, you've never worked together and Mason has approximately 0 combat training. She looked at Mason. Your job today is simple. Don't break anything important and try to keep up. Harper will lead the exercises. Wait, what about... Emma? Just told you, you're about to make a mistake. I suggest you skip it and listen instead. Walsh walked toward the observation windows, leaving them alone on the floor. Harper cracked her knuckles. Right. Mason, before we start, show me what you can do. Basic demonstration. Mason hesitated, then focused on the warmth in his chest. The patterns on his skin began to glow faintly. He made himself light, jumped, went 15 feet straight, up, hung there for a moment, then landed soft as a feather. Good. Range? 5 meters for external manipulation. More if I'm just affecting myself. Maximum weight you've moved? Mason thought about Torres, about making him feel the weight of a mountain. I don't know exactly. A lot. Daniel whistled. Vague but promising. Let's test it, Harper said. She gestured to the empty section of floor, where a series of metal cubes sat in graduated sizes. The smallest was maybe a foot across. The largest was the size of a car. Make the biggest one heavy as you can. Mason walked to the cube, placed his hand on it and pushed. The patterns on his chest flared bright. The cube groaned, the floor beneath it cracked, and something in the air changed. Emma gasped. "Stop! Stop now!" But Mason couldn't stop. The Empower was flowing out of him in a rush, more than he intended, and the cube wasn't just getting heavier. It was getting denser. The metal was compressing, shrinking, collapsing in on itself like a black hole forming in slow motion. Warning: gravitational. Singularity forming. Cease manipulation immediately. Mason yanked his hand back, cutting the power. The cube stopped shrinking, but the damage was done. It was now half its original size, super dense, and the floor around it had spiderwebbed with cracks radiating outward. Alarms blared. The observation windows polarized. Walsh's voice came over the intercom. Lockdown protocol. Nobody move. What did I just do? Mason breathed. Harper was staring at the cube with something like awe. You didn't just make it heavy. You increased its gravitational mass. That's not supposed to be possible at your integration level. Probability of accidental singularity formation was 67%, Emma said quietly. I tried to warn you. Daniel had backed up several feet. Can someone please tell me if we're all about to get sucked into a black hole? No. Walsh emerged from a side door, flanked by technicians with scanning equipment. The effect stabilized when Mason stopped, but this changes things. She looked at Mason with an expression he couldn't read. Your core isn't just manipulating gravity, it's manipulating space-time directly. That's alpha-class potential. Is that good? It means you could eventually do things we thought were theoretically impossible. It also means you're incredibly dangerous if you lose control. Walsh gestured to the technicians. Get this contained and analyzed. Squad, you're moving to Simulation Room 2. We need to test Mason's limits in a controlled environment before he accidentally creates an actual black hole. They followed Walsh through a maze of corridors to a room that looked like a holodeck from Star Trek. White walls that could apparently project any environment. Harper explained as they entered. Full sensory simulation, hard light constructs you can interact with. Pain feedback is real, but injuries aren't. You can't actually die here, but your brain won't know the difference. So try not to get killed. Anyway. Comforting, Mason muttered. The room shimmered and suddenly they were standing on a rooftop. City spread out below them. Looked like somewhere Asian, maybe Seoul or Tokyo. The sun was setting, painting everything gold and orange. Environment. Urban high ground. Walsh's voice came from everywhere and nowhere. Scenario, coordinated power testing. You need to learn to work together. Harper will lead. Harper stepped to the edge of the rooftop. Right. Basic synchronization first. Daniel, I want you absorbing kinetic energy from falling debris. Emma, predict where the debris will fall. Mason, you're going to create the debris by manipulating gravity on those water towers. She pointed to several large cylindrical tanks on nearby buildings. Wait, Mason said. I'm just going to… What, tear them apart? It's a simulation. Yes. Make them fall but controlled. Daniel catches the kinetic energy, redistributes it safely. Emma makes sure nothing actually hits us. It's about coordination. Mason focused on the nearest water tower, felt the familiar warmth in his chest, and pulled. The tower's supports groaned, twisted, but instead of just falling, the tower seemed to fold in on itself, crumpling like paper. Not like that, Harper yelled. You're compressing it again. Just break the supports. Mason adjusted, tried again. This time the tower broke free cleanly and fell. Daniel moved to intercept, arms outstretched, and when the debris hit him, it simply stopped. Energy absorbed, then redirected into the ground in a safe dispersion. Better, Harper said. Again, 3 towers, synchronized. They worked for an hour. Mason learned to be more precise, to manipulate without crushing. Daniel's timing improved. Emma called out probability adjustments. 30% chance left. Imra fragments reach us. Mason, reduce gravity on the left side by 12%. And slowly, surprisingly, they started to work as a unit. Then Harper called for something different. Advanced exercise. I want all of you to activate your powers simultaneously, focused on this central point. She marked a spot on the rooftop with chalk. We're testing resonance, whether your cores interact. Is that safe? Mason asked. Probably, Harper said, which was not reassuring. They formed a triangle around the marked spot. At Harper's signal, they activated together. Mason made the spot heavy. Daniel absorbed the kinetic energy of its sinking. Emma did something Mason couldn't quite see, but the air around the spot shimmered with possibility. And the cores sang. Mason felt it through his whole body, a resonance, like a tuning fork, struck in his chest. The patterns on his skin flared bright, and he could suddenly sense Daniel and Emma's powers, feel them like phantom limbs. The marked spot on the rooftop began to glow. Harper? Daniel's voice was strained. I don't think. The spot cracked. Not the concrete, reality itself. A hairline fracture appeared in the air, and through it, Mason glimpsed something impossible. A space that wasn't space, bright and geometric, and utterly wrong. Not the void Torres had hinted at, but something else. Something ordered. Shapes moved in that other space. They noticed the crack. They started moving toward it. Shut it down! Harper screamed. Mason tried to cut his power, but the resonance had locked them together. The crack widened, now the size of a quarter, and something was pressing through. Emma moved. Her eyes went completely white. Probability of breach, 99%. Probability of containment, if... Her voice changed, layered with something. Override! She touched the crack and it slammed shut with a sound like thunder. All three of them collapsed. The simulation flickered, destabilized, then snapped back to normal. Walsh was there instantly, checking them. Report. What happened? We made a door, Harper gasped. They made a goddamn door to somewhere else. Mason looked at the spot where the crack had been. Something remained, a faint sigil burned into the simulated concrete, geometric and alien. That's not possible, Walsh said, but her voice was shaking. Cores don't create breaches. They seal them. That's the whole point. Maybe individually, Emma said. Her eyes were back to normal, but she looked exhausted. But together, we're doing something new. The alarms that had been silent suddenly blared again. Walsh grabbed her radio. Walsh here, what? She listened, her face going pale. Lock down. The facility. Nobody in or out. I'm on my way. She looked at the three of them. Get to medbay, full scans, all of you. And don't talk to anyone about what just happened. What's wrong? Mason asked. Walsh was already running for the door. Someone in Pittsburgh just manifested core abilities. Someone who never touched a sphere. And the energy signature matches what you three just created. The simulation room door sealed behind her, leaving them alone with the sigil still glowing faintly on the floor. Emma stared at it, her expression distant. Probability of this being an isolated incident, 4%. Probability of more spontaneous. Awakenings, 96%. Probability of us being responsible. She looked at Mason and Daniel. 100%. We gave someone powers, Daniel said slowly. Just by... What, resonating? Harper's hands were shaking. This is bad, this is really, really bad. If Walsh can't contain this... The lights in the simulation room flickered, then died completely. Emergency lighting kicked in, bathing everything. In red. Mason's core spoke, and for the first time it sounded almost worried. Alert, unknown energy pattern detected. Origin, Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania. Pattern analysis, gravitational manipulation, host signature, familiar, identity probability. 94%. Mason's blood went cold. No, it can't be. Matched signature, Emma Reed. Your sister has awakened. Somewhere in Pittsburgh, in the secured apartment where his family was supposed to be safe, his 12-year-old sister had just developed powers she shouldn't have. Powers that Mason and his squad had somehow given her by cracking reality. And Torres was still out there, hunting for cores. Mason ran for the door. The emergency lockdown turned Facility 17 into a tomb of steel and concrete. Mason's hands were pressed against the reinforced glass of the quarantine chamber, watching armed guards take positions in the corridor outside. Behind him, Harper paced like a caged animal, while Daniel sat against the wall, head in his hands. Emma Reeves stood perfectly still in the center of the room, eyes distant, calculating probabilities Mason couldn't see. "This is insane," Harper said for the third. "Seemed like we didn't do anything wrong. We were following orders. We cracked reality and gave someone powers," Daniel interrupted, without looking up. "Pretty sure that counts as doing something." Mason's reflection stared back at him from the glass. The blue patterns on his skin were still glowing faintly, agitated, responding to his stress. His core hummed anxiously in his chest. "Facility, defense systems active. 47 armed personnel detected. 12 containment specialists. Threat assessment. Moderate to high. Recommendation, prepare for hostile extraction." "They're not going to hurt us," Mason said, but he didn't sound convincing even to himself. "Probability of physical harm in next 6 hours. 32%, Emma said quietly. Probability of permanent containment, 67%. Probability of being separated, 89%. "Jesus, Emma, can you not?" Harper snapped. "You asked me to always tell you the odds." "I'm unasking." The door hissed open, not the main entrance, but a side access panel Mason hadn't noticed. Dr. Walsh stepped through, looking like she hadn't slept in the 18 hours since the incident. 2 guards flanked her but stayed outside. "Tell me you have good news," Mason said. Walsh's expression was answer enough. "The spontaneous awakening in Pittsburgh has been confirmed. Your sister, Emma Reed, manifested gravitational manipulation. Abilities approximately 40 minutes after your resonance event. She's currently under observation at a medical facility. Is she okay?" Mason was already moving toward the door. "I need to see her." "You can't. And she's physically fine. Scared, confused, but unharmed." Walsh pulled out her tablet, showed him footage. Emma, his little sister, floating 3 feet off the ground in what looked like a hospital room, crying, unable to control her descent. Their mother stood below with arms outstretched, trying to talk her down. Mason felt something crack inside him. "This is my fault." "This is all of our faults," Walsh corrected. "The resonance event created some kind of energy cascade. We're detecting similar signatures across multiple locations, Chicago, Seoul, London. So far, only your sister has manifested active abilities, but the others are showing elevated readings consistent with pre-awakening." "How many others?" Harper asked. Walsh hesitated. 17. So far. The number hit like a physical blow. 17. People who might develop core powers because of what Mason and his squad had done. 17 people who'd never asked for this, never touched an alien sphere, but were being changed anyway. "The Oversight Council wants to speak with you," Walsh continued. "All of you. In 10 minutes, conference room B. I need you to be calm, respectful, and for God's sake, don't give them any reason to classify you as a threat." "Are we?" Daniel asked. "A threat?" Walsh looked at each of them in turn. "That's what they're trying to decide." Conference room B was less a room and more a bunker. Concrete walls, no windows, a single metal table with chairs bolted to the floor. The far wall was dominated by a massive screen that flickered to life as Mason and his squad entered, flanked by guards. 5 faces appeared on the screen, arranged in a grid. The Oversight Council. Mason recognized the type immediately: bureaucrats and generals and scientists, the kind of people who made decisions about other people's lives from comfortable offices. The woman in the center square spoke first. Her, nameplate read, Director Christine Vale, mid-50s, severe haircut, eyes like frozen glass. Core host Mason Reed, host Harper Kim, host Daniel Cross, and... She paused on Emma Reeves. Probability manipulator. Designation pending. "My name is Emma," Emma said softly. "Names are a courtesy, not a right in this facility." Vale's tone could have frozen nitrogen. "You are here because you represent either a breakthrough or a catastrophe. We haven't decided which yet." A man in military uniform, General Howard Marks, leaned forward. "Let me be direct. In a 6-hour window, you 4 created a dimensional fracture, generated an energy signature we've never seen before, and apparently triggered spontaneous core awakenings in at least 17 civilians. Do you understand the implications?" "We didn't mean to," Harper started. Intent is irrelevant. Effect is everything. A woman with a thick accent, Dr. Yuki Sato, according to her nameplate, adjusted her glasses. We've been studying core integration for 2 years. We've seen hosts master their individual powers, seen them work in teams, seen them push their limits. Never have we seen resonance create new awakenings. You've fundamentally changed the rules. Is that a bad thing? Mason asked. The question came out more challenging than he'd intended. Vale's expression didn't change. That depends on whether we can control it. Dr. Walsh, present your findings. Walsh stood at the side of the room, tablet in hand. She looked uncomfortable being put on the spot. The resonance event created what we're calling a catalytic cascade. When 3 or more compatible cores synchronize their frequencies, they generate a field that can temporarily thin the barriers between dimensions. In this case, the barrier between our reality and somewhere else. The ordered space, Emma Reeves murmured. I saw it clearly for 2.3 seconds. It wasn't empty like the void Torres came from. It had structure, intelligence. Every council member's attention snapped to her. You saw entities? Dr. Sato asked sharply. I saw shapes, geometric patterns that moved with purpose. They noticed us. They were curious. Emma's eyes went distant. Probability that they'll try to reach us again, 93%. The room went very quiet. General Marks broke the silence. So, you've potentially opened a door to hostile extra-dimensional entities. Fantastic. And the spontaneous awakenings? Walsh pulled up a holographic display in the center of the table. We believe the energy released during the resonance event acted as a catalyst for latent core compatibility. The 17 affected individuals all show baseline genetic markers, consistent with successful core integration, but they never encountered physical spheres. The resonance somehow activated them remotely. Like a virus, Vale said flatly. Like a trigger, Walsh corrected. A specific frequency that awakened. Dormant potential. A 5th council member spoke for the first time, an older man with kind eyes that didn't match the cold calculation in his voice. Dr. James Fletcher. The question before us is simple. Are these 4 hosts an asset or a liability? Dr. Walsh argues they're our best hope for understanding and controlling this phenomenon. I argue they're a ticking time bomb that's already gone off once. We can help, Mason said. My sister, if she's awakening, I can help her learn control. I know what it's like to— Your sister is exactly why you can't be involved, Vale interrupted. Emotional attachment compromises judgment. If Emma Reed's awakening follows a similar trajectory to corrupted hosts like Michael Torres, difficult decisions may need to be made. Decisions you would interfere with. Mason felt his core react to his anger. The patterns on his skin flared bright. If you're threatening my sister, guards moved, weapons raised, not guns, those wouldn't work on core hosts, but some kind of energy devices that hummed with dangerous potential. Stand down, Reed, General Marks said coldly. Prove you can. Control yourself or prove Dr. Fletcher right. Harper grabbed Mason's arm, squeezed hard. Don't, please! Mason forced himself to breathe. The patterns dimmed.